Welcome to Asian Insider, a podcast series by the Straits Times. I'm your host, Nirmal Ghosh, and today I am joined by Professor Thitinan Pongsudhirak to talk about Thailand, which in August saw yet another new Prime Minister, this time the daughter of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. Paetongtarn Shinawatra is 38 years old. There's a lot of pretty rocky history there, as we know. The Shinawatra family has been in and out of power, faced two military coups, and political parties that have won the popular vote have been dissolved. It would take all day to go into all of that, but today we are focusing on Thailand in the here and now. Thitinan Pongsudhirak is a professor and senior fellow of the Institute of Security and International Studies at Chulalongkorn University's Faculty of Political Science. And I believe he is currently a visiting professor as well at the London School of Economics, the LSE. He is always much in demand. He writes and speaks prolifically, and he's also an old friend. Ajahn, welcome back to Asian Insider. Nice to have you back.
Thank you, Nirmal, and greetings to all the viewers.
So, Ajahn, these years of political power games in Bangkok have taken a toll. In August, Fitch Ratings in a bulletin on Thailand noted that political volatility has hampered the effectiveness of policy making and so forth, hinders the country's efforts to boost confidence among foreign investors and local businesses and so forth. Now, you mentioned in a piece in the Bangkok Post that Thailand is in the doldrums, so to speak, economic growth less than 2%, household debt up. This is in sharp contrast to around 20 years ago. Thailand was an emerging regional leader with the potential of a middle power, but foreign policy has since been patchy and hostage to this polarization and domestic volatility, and now an economy in desperate need of renewal. What is your prognosis for Thailand today under this still fairly new prime minister?
Yeah, it's a bit demoralizing, depressing when I look at Thailand, what's been happening over the last 2 decades. The here and now connected to the back then over the last 2 decades. And really, Thailand has been at a standstill. You can see it being cyclical and circular. It has the vicious cycle of having elections, and then eventually it leads to some kind of a judicial intervention, military coup, and then reset with a constitutional election, and the winning parties have been dissolved time and again. And as you said, it would take all day to go into all the minute details. But suffice to say that over the last 2 decades, Thailand has lost so many opportunities, and it is now falling behind its peer competitors in the region. We are seeing more signs of political decay and economic stagnation in Thailand. This is unmistakable. I think the traditional institutions that call the shots in Thailand, they've lost credibility, and they are ill-equipped, unable to move Thailand forward. At the same time, they will not allow other players, other political parties and new forces to move Thailand forward. So Thailand is kind of stuck, and it might be like this for the foreseeable future. I'm beginning to think, Nirmal, that maybe Thailand just got lucky for a while. We look back at Thailand in the 1980s, 1990s, and we thought, wow, this is where to go back then. But if you look back then, there was no other place, not many other places to go. China had a civil war, and North Vietnam, South Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, 1970s, 1980s, before Vietnam really kind of opened up again in the late 80s after Doi Moi in 1986, 1990s. And then, the region began to kind of come into its own, the different countries. Indonesia in the late 1990s was on the opposite side of Thailand. Indonesia had violence, post-crisis, 1997, 98, 1999. It was a pivotal turning point, but Indonesia got over the hump. Thailand, I think, had a big opportunity in early 2000s after the economic crisis in 97, 98. That was a time when the old guard, when the traditional institutions of the monarchy, military, bureaucracy, judiciary, needed to make way for a new kind of Thailand. And we had Thaksin Shinawatra, and you mentioned his daughter now is prime minister, his sister was prime minister. We've had three Shinawatra family members from this clan, this dynasty, being prime ministers of Thailand. At that time, in early 2000s, roughly 22 years ago, we had an opportunity to kind of upgrade, really climb up the slope, climb up the value chain, and Thaksin came in with policy innovations. It was kind of a restructuring of the Thai economy and Thai political landscape. He revamped the bureaucracy, made it more streamlined, better division of labor, from 14 ministries to 20 ministries, and so on. But the underbelly of Thaksin was conflict of interest. And that was enough to give the established centers of power, pretext and justification to overthrow him. The problem for Thailand is that the military coup that overthrew Thaksin in 2006 did not work out like it used to. It was supposed to reset, with a short-term caretaker government, which we had in 2006, 2007. And then they dissolved Thaksin's party, Thai Rak Thai. But then he kept winning. His second party won in 2007. And then they took power, and then they were ousted again by the yellow shirts in 2008. And then the red shirts that supported Thaksin's parties, they rebelled. They were put down in 2009, 2010. And Yingluck, his sister, came in and won with the third party, Pheu Thai, in 2011. And then it went back another cycle of protests and violence in 2013, 14. Yingluck was then kicked out in another military coup in May 2014. This time, I think this was the coup that sunk Thailand, because that coup in 2014, led by General Prayut Chan-o-cha, stayed for the long term and came up with another constitution and basically engineered and crafted a constitution that allowed the old guard to supervise and keep control for the long term, for the indefinite long term. So that's what we have, despite elections in 2019, and a new party, Future Forward, and that was also dissolved in February 2020, sparking protests by young people, and that was put down. And eventually we had an election last year. The Future Forward successor, Move Forward, won the election, stunningly, beat the Thaksin party, Pheu Thai, but it also was dissolved. So make no mistake here, it's very clear what's happening in Thailand over the last 20, 25 years. The old guard, the traditional institutions will not let go of Thailand without a fight. And they control the outcomes through these agencies like the Constitutional Court, the Election Commission, the Anti-Corruption Commission, through the Senate. Now, under the Phumchai Thai influence, this is going to be the structure of Thai politics moving forward. And the new parties like Move Forward now, called Prachachon People's Party, with a reform agenda to move Thailand forward, to reform the military, the monarchy, and really a kind of a compromise. But the old guard will not have it. We will see now they've co-opted, made a deal with Thaksin to bring him back. And now Paetongtarn, his youngest daughter now, the third Shinawatra as Prime Minister, they're doing the bidding of the establishment. But they're hoping that, they can do both. They can move Thailand forward, stay in power, and then still keep the establishment on side.
Yes, it's a disappointing sort of litany, really. And Thailand is sort of standing still while competitors are moving forward. Everywhere I go, people are praising Vietnam, saying it's amazing how competitive Vietnam is and so forth. And of course, Indonesia and India. And now Thailand could even face tariffs from the new Trump administration in DC. What does the government actually need to do to get the economy going again, to compete? What opportunities does it need to seize on?
Well, first we have to recognize what's been going wrong. I mean, the Thai politics, we already kind of recapped it, but along the way, Thailand lost competitiveness. I mean, in the late 1980s, 1990s, back then Thailand was a darling for investors. And I think in the 2000s, a lot of investors, still gave Thailand a chance. But after 2014, after that coup, I think, we're seeing signs of stagnation, economic stagnation. The trend growth of the economic expansion used to be, 4%, 5% early 2000s. In the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was like 6.5%. Now it's down to 1.9%. This is during the Prayut era, 9 years. And now we're looking at growth of 2.7% in 2024, maybe 2.9% 2025. And that's not enough to satisfy demands and expectations. And you look at the GDP size. Can you believe it? I teach political economy here. It used to be the rule of thumb that the Vietnamese economy, the GDP, would be about half the size of Thailand. In 5 years' time, Vietnam's GDP at its rate of growth about 6%, with Thailand's rate of growth of less than 3%, Vietnam's nominal GDP will overtake Thailand's. Even small Singapore, small country, right? Its GDP size will overtake Thailand. So, we have to recognize that it's been very damaging what General Prayut and his military did after the coup in 2014. Now, the growth engines, the growth locomotives really, it's just not there anymore. Because the technology has changed, has advanced, the world economy has changed, the nature of growth has changed. We have to move into the new tech innovations. I mean, Thailand completely missed the boat on supply, on the semiconductors, right? Yeah. Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia. You look at the global value chains and how you need to climb up the value chains. Thailand is actually descending downwards. It's specializing in hospitality, labor-driven industries like before, the old manufacturing. But the old manufacturing is having a shell shock, it's being challenged by the new technology. I mean, the electric vehicles, for example, EV is undermining the Japanese autos in Thailand. So Thailand is not making that adjustment. You look at the AI, nowhere to be seen. Malaysia has an AI strategy. Indonesia is attracting, tech investment. Nvidia went big on Vietnam. So people are these big tech investors, and the nature of technology itself. We have digitalization. I mean, you look at e-commerce. Thailand is just at the lower end. In the meantime, it's banking on hospitality like tourism, based on numbers, hotels and tourism. I mean, all these guides and restaurants and so on. But that's not enough. I mean, that's going to place Thailand at the lower end of the value chains. So for this government, they're trying. I give them credit for trying, and they're trying to attract some data centers. It's late in the game, but it's not too late. Semiconductors, even packaging in the back end, I think is very late now. But Thailand is kind of like salvaging and just picking up pieces where it can with the new tech boom and innovation. But what it needs to do is overall systematic upgrading, education, upskilling, reskilling. I mean, this is the kind of value creation preparation that Thailand has just not been focused on because of all the volatility in the political landscape.
Yes, it's been disappointing, and I've noticed this focus on tourism. It's sort of like a one-trick pony, and it's an old focus, which is not competitive enough and too vulnerable in this volatile world. So let us move on to the neighborhood and Thailand's role in ASEAN, and perhaps let me split that into two questions with some overlap. One challenge is the ongoing internal conflict in Myanmar, which has a spillover effect in the neighborhood. ASEAN and Thailand have been ineffective in stopping this, in mediating or anything. China seems to have a larger influence than ASEAN in Myanmar. So what are Thailand's options there? The second issue, which I've spoken about earlier on Asian Insider, is the proliferation of transnational crime, specifically the scam industry, cybercrime, right across Thailand's borders. It preys on millions of Thais as well as others around the world, centered mostly in Laos, but also in Myanmar. What are your views on Thailand's options? Is Thailand doing enough? Can Thailand do anything about it? These two questions, if you could hold forth a bit.
These conditions, these doldrums and dire economic conditions and political volatility matter for Thailand's international role and regional standing. Thailand's international standing has never been so low. It has diminished. Thailand's saving grace still is that you cannot ignore this country. It has the location is just so central to what's going on in the region. It also has a sizable critical mass, even though it's regressing and it's stuck in the standstill, but it's still a key player in the region. ASEAN's movement on Myanmar cannot do really without Thailand's active participation and contribution. Right. And ASEAN itself has been weakened by internal divisions, the US-China conflict, even on the Myanmar, of course, has divided ASEAN. Some countries, some member states want to see democratic dialogue return, but others are staying muted. You look at the Russia-Ukraine, that's divided ASEAN. Vietnam and Laos have abstained from the major UN resolutions to condemn the Russian aggression. You look at the Israeli conflicts in the Middle East, Hamas, Hezbollah, but Indonesia, Malaysia feel very strongly, strong solidarity with the Palestinians. So they feel very strongly about what Israel is doing in the region. So you look around, ASEAN is divided. Now, at the same time, I think that the ASEAN centrality being eroded has frustrated the external players. So you can see the Quad, these US and Australia, Japan, India, they are becoming more active. The AUKUS, the US, UK, and Australia, this plan to strategy to provide nuclear technology to Australia. And you look at other multilaterals, with South Korea, Japan, US, Philippines, Japan, Australia, different multilateral combinations. But these maneuvers and undertakings reflect the weakness and frustration with ASEAN centrality and the role of ASEAN. Now, ASEAN is not going to go away, but I think this is the weakest point that ASEAN has been. Myanmar is the main sticking point. If ASEAN cannot get its act together to arrest the violence and civil war and really just heinous acts by the Myanmar military regime, then it's not going to have any credibility. Now, in Myanmar now, the State Administration Council, this is a military junta, is losing the war. It's a civil war that started after the coup in February 2021. And it's a very violent, disturbing war. The images coming out of Myanmar is just unbelievable. It's appalling.
Yeah.
This dismemberment of bodies, for example. And this is a fight to the death. The People's Defense Force units, these are like local youth militias around the country. The National Unity Government is a kind of a shadow government. And you have these ethnic armies, the ethnic armed organizations taking the fight to the junta, the military, and winning. In the Rakhine state, for example, the Arakan army has pretty much taken over that state. The Kachin state, Karen, Shan, the military is losing pretty much all the border, the border states, the borderland states. Now, in the hinterland, in the inner Myanmar, the military junta, SAC, is holding on to Naypyidaw, Yangon, Mandalay, these areas. But even there, they're fighting a losing battle. China has the most at stake here. I think China has the gas pipeline, they have the port, they have Chinese businesses, Chinese nationals, and so on. And China will not sit idle with what's going on. So I think they want to have a change of leadership. They want to kind of damage control by changing Min Aung Hlaing, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, which has made a huge mess of the country because of his coup. He led a coup in 2021 in February. And to have, I think maybe to have an election in order to have a fait accompli and change the momentum, change the status quo, get rid of Min Aung Hlaing. But that's not easy because Min Aung Hlaing is not leaving. The other players, ASEAN is the main player. It has a 5-point consensus, but that has been ineffectual, has not made progress. So Thailand now is trying to broker some kind of a way forward together with the Troika, the ASEAN Troika. And we will see Malaysia's chairmanship of ASEAN next year, 2000, will be crucial. That will be followed by the Philippines. So I think these are 2 crucial years coming up. And then Singapore after that. So 3, and then Thailand. So this is a good run now, 3-4 years ahead. I see the original members of ASEAN, the original 5, they're more aligned. They can make the difference for ASEAN. Once we bring in Brunei and the Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, this is when ASEAN becomes more problematic and limited. So, the chairmanship in 2025, Malaysia has, I think they are very eager. They have domestic political stability now. I think Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim wants to be a statesman. He wants to get some regional dividends for rerunning re-elections in Malaysia politics. what we need to see in Myanmar is that it's never going to be the same country prior to the coup in 2021. What kind of country comes out of it, I think, depends on negotiation, compromise, and bargaining. It has to be some kind of a confederation at a minimum. I think a federal democratic union that all these resistance coalition columns they're advocating will be very difficult. But the NUG has to be more assertive and compelling. The ethnic armies, I think now they've got the upper hand, and China has also a lot of influence over certain ethnic areas, like especially Kachin State, Shan State, and then the Arakan army. I think they have control of Rakhine. They're not very favorable towards the Rohingyas. So in Rakhine, you have a crisis within a crisis. Crisis of the Arakan army winning against the SAC, but the Arakan army in Rakhine, they will suppress and repress the Rohingya population. So that's another kind of crisis. I think moving forward, look, it's very convoluted, the concentric circles of crises and challenges in Myanmar. But moving forward, we have to, I think, look at 2-3 ways ahead. The major players outside, China, but also India, I think also ASEAN certainly, and then maybe EU, US, certainly Japan, will need to have some kind of a role, at one level. And then ASEAN itself, within ASEAN, together with Myanmar, ASEAN has to engage NUG, not just the SAC. This can also provide a way forward. Thailand itself, it wants to play a role. There's a feeling in Thailand that we've lost out on so many fronts. The tech boom, innovation, economic opportunities, political crisis, turmoil. But, the regional leadership Thailand has lost out. So now this government is trying to make up for lost time. They really want to be a player here. So Thailand needs to step up, but it needs to be inclusive and holistic in view of the NUG, the EAOs, the PDFs, and the SAC. The worst thing Thailand can do is deal with the SAC and sell out to the SAC, giving it recognition and legitimacy at the expense of the NUG, the EAOs, the PDFs. This will generate distrust in the medium term.
Okay,
and
this
Thailand needs to cultivate trust because it needs to address its scam centers, transnational crimes, which affects Thailand probably the most. And the scam centers, transnational crimes, they move around the region. Right. And so you really need a regional tackling, regional resolution and maneuvers to deal with them, to put a stop to them.
Last quick one before I let you go. Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim recently said that former Thai PM Thaksin Shinawatra would be part of his informal team of experienced statesmen to advise Malaysia when they assume the chair of ASEAN next year. Do you think there will be any bright ideas that may emerge from this? ASEAN, as we know, famously works on consensus, so advice can just be ignored. And I do see some skepticism about this. Do you see this as an encouraging sign that he's bringing these so-called senior statesmen on board?
This is a controversial and delicate matter. I'm a little bit surprised that, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim appointed Thaksin Shinawatra as advisor because, there are many people he could appoint. And Dr. Thaksin, former Prime Minister, he used to be on top of the game. He had a game for Thailand, and we lost. That was about 2003 was Thailand's peak as a regional leader, his role internationally. But that's 20 years ago. I mean, I'm not sure the game he can bring now is up to date. You need a new generation. Prime Minister Anwar himself is also from the old generation. So we need new voices, new faces. I'm not sure how much Thaksin can deliver or broker or facilitate moving forward on Myanmar. And, there needs to be an outreach to the NUG. I don't see that happening. I'm concerned that Thaksin in the past has been associated with Senior General Min Aung Hlaing. They spent some, one water festival New Year together back in about 2012 under Yingluck's premiership. So these are old style, old guard. I'm not sure if this is the new leaders in NUG and a lot of the PDFs, they're all young. So that's what we need to look at, who can facilitate, who can kind of be a mediator. And I'm not sure if Thaksin is the right choice, but I'm not sure at the same time, PM Anwar may not put that much currency into it after the appointment. He also might appoint others as well to be a kind of a team of advisors, not just Thaksin himself.
Very good point about the generation gap. Professor Thitinan Pongsudhirak, always such a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for joining me on Asian Insider. I know you're very busy. All the best out there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That nicely wraps this discussion up for the Asian Insider podcast. I'm your host, Nirmal Ghosh, and this episode was produced and edited by Faiza Sani.